Charles Louis Napoleon Bonaparte was born in Paris Wednesday, April 20th, 1808. The youngest son of Louis Bonaparte and Hortense de Beauharnais, he was the nephew and step-grandson of Napoleon Bonaparte. Following the fall of his uncle, the young prince and his parents settled in Switzerland. His parents decided to have him educated in Bavaria. This gave him a slight German accent, for which remained with him for the remainder of his life. Being educated by former French revolutionaries as well as loyal Bonapartists, he gained some could say, radical belief in French republicanism, but also his own uncle's hubris. Into adulthood, he did attempt 2 coups, both of which failed miserably, which forced him to flee to separate countries, including Bavaria, and back to London. But then he would come back in 1848, when the revolutions of 1848 scourged across Europe. King Louis Philippe was actually forced from the throne. Ironically, he went to England, but then it was the birth of the Second French Republic. In December of 1848, with 5,572,834 votes, and with the support of conservatives Adolphe Thiers and Victor Hugo, they sons of a Bonapartist official, as well as Hugo, the son of a Bonapartist general, Louis Napoleon was made the first president of the Second French Republic. As president, he reformed and restructured France. However, on December 3rd, 1851, with 30,000 French soldiers in Paris, an election was held later in the month. 7,439,216 French citizens voted for the abolishment of the Second Republic and the foundation of the Second French Empire. Unlike his uncle, however, he did not want to rule by absolutes in France and her colonies. He created a hybrid government as a constitutional monarch with the head of state and government combined into the position of emperor with a partnership with the National Assembly. From 1852 to 1870, he actually led some very popular reforms such as investment into the arts and sciences, but also military reforms, making France have a national military service requiring all young men to serve for a certain amount of time. In our time, we have nations like Israel and China that follow this practice as well. This actually gave France the largest standing army in Europe, with its peak being 2,740,000 at its height, as well as the foundation of the famous French Foreign Legion. He also set off the famous Haussmann's renovation, which turned the city from a tight, compacted streets to the open, spacious streets that we see in modern France today. Also leading through the Crimean War, 1853 to 1856, as well as the Italian Wars of Unification from April to July 1859. In 1861, taking advantage of the American Civil War, Napoleon decided to put an Austrian prince, Maximilian, as Emperor of Mexico, breaching the Monroe Doctrine that has been active in the United States since the presidency of James Monroe. This will be his first blunder, which is immortalized in the Mexican holiday Cinco de Mayo, which commemorates the Mexican victory over the French at Puebla, but also a sign of the defeat of the French intervention. Slowly following this, popularity in the emperor went down as his reluctance for conflict, as well as his illnesses, became a little more clear. He was actually not a very healthy man. He suffered with a lot of health problems when he was young. He was actually the third youngest son of Hortense and Louis. The first son had died. He was the second, and was not a good experience. He also lacked allies. He burned the bridges with the Russians during the Crimean War. He burned the bridges with the Austrians during the Italian Wars of Unification. And he was very much close with Great Britain, but continentally, Great Britain didn't have that much power in Europe itself. They had a large empire, but not great power in the continent itself. And this is mainly because Napoleon began to fear the growing Prussian state. They had, at this point, defeated the Austrian Empire under Franz Joseph I, as well as the Kingdom of Denmark, led by Christian IX. So these were two large kingdoms. Austria was obviously an empire. The Kingdom of Denmark had always been there. These were two very large nations, and now this was on the footsteps of France when the Northern German Confederation was formed at the end of the Austro-Prussian War. In 1870, following the deposing of the Spanish monarch, a sneaky man named Otto von Bismarck agreed with the Spanish government, naming Leopold, Prince of Hohenzollern, as the new king and emperor of the Spanish Empire. Napoleon was extremely opposed to the nomination. This was because now there was a threat of two Hohenzollerns surrounding him. Hohenzollern was the royal house of Prussia at the time. They are actually the only royal house of Prussia that's ever existed. But this was now a situation that you have a Hohenzollern on both his borders. Bismarck knew this. He was thriving on the idea that Napoleon was scared, and if they were to do this, it would declare war. Now, the reason he wanted them to declare war was because following the end of the Austro-Prussian War, loose alliance had been signed with the southern German states. That's why it was called the Northern German Confederation. The southern German states said they would come to Prussia's aid only if Prussia was attacked. They would not follow Prussia into a war. They would only follow them into a war if they were the ones attacked. So what happened was, we have a lot of tension going on now in the 1870s. Napoleon decides he wants to settle it. He wants to make sure it doesn't overflow. So he sends Count Vincent Benedetti to Bad Ems Spa to talk to the King of Prussia, Wilhelm I. Now, the two actually have a very cordial meeting. Wilhelm actually agrees with France, mainly because Wilhelm is not as ambitious as Bismarck. He doesn't want a war. He doesn't want to mess with the French. He just wants to control the Kingdom of Prussia. He really doesn't even want to be in charge of the Northern German Confederation, but Bismarck's his minister-president, so he has to go along with it. So he agrees, and he says, yeah, no, it's fine. So what happens next is a transcript of the meeting is written. And Wilhelm says, send this back to Berlin and have it published. So it's sent back to Berlin, the capital of Prussia, but there's just one problem. The person that it goes to is the minister-president. And if we remember who the minister-president is, it's Otto von Bismarck. So what happens next, we'll explain tomorrow during our part 2, which will be Bismarck's background. But you can see how sending the transcript to a man who clearly doesn't want things to work out could be a very dangerous situation. Thank you so much for watching. Part 2 will be out tomorrow, as I said. And we'll see you real soon, everybody.